Let's jump into this, starting with team 26.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, sorry, just to set the context here, it's going to be a 4-minute presentation as if you're pitching a startup. Judges get, I will be timing, FYI. It's okay if it's a few seconds later. It's not okay if it's 5 minutes. Judges will have 5 minutes to do a Q&A, and we're looking to get this done 7:45, 7:50-ish. Everyone all good? Okay, who's presenting on team 26 so I can give you guys co-host?
Yeah, go ahead, Neha, if you want to.
We were just wondering, is it possible to potentially use our recordings for the actual demo itself? Since our technical person is not at home at the moment, and it seems like the interface to actually log into the system is down.
So the idea is like you're gonna do like a bit of a presentation then a demo?
Yeah, or we can just play the whole video. Up to you guys, whatever you prefer.
Do a bit of a presentation, do some level setting, then show the demo, and I'll give you a little bit more flexibility on the timing given the transition time need.
Okay, James, maybe I can kick us off. Maybe if you want to get the demo ready, or like the recording of the demo ready.
And I'll actually just use that to fill in that specific piece of the conversation. I'm just gonna have to figure out how to pull it up live.
Sure.
Are you gonna run through the deck as we do this, or what are you thinking here?
I'm pulling it up as right now.
Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to share the audio for this. I'm thinking about it a little bit. It might be a little funky.
We can maybe talk over it.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Let us know when you're ready, Gus. Cool. Well, hi, everyone. We're Team 26, and our product is Reco.
Yeah. So essentially, we wanted to look at drug reconciliation and medication reconciliation because it's a significant issue. It's like basically medical errors, the third leading cause of death in the U.S. It's largely due to medical errors and medication errors. And it happens really frequently at transitional care. And notably, it's super freaking expensive. So it's a great place to spend time.
Many causes for this as well, but we've come up with a solution for called Reco.
Wow, yeah. I don't have share screen permissions, actually. Sorry.
Gus, do you mind giving him stop sharing?
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
So the tool is currently down right now and our technical person's out, so we can't get it running for this specifically. But essentially what we've done is we've been able to tie together a couple of separate databases, and let me just make this full screen for us, to basically allow ourselves to use natural language in query questions about patient databases. And it will basically spit out results and recommendations about what's happening with those patients, what medications they're on, and if there's going to be any issues with the medications they're on and the medications you're interested in prescribing them. The area, or one of the areas in particular, we thought this might be particularly useful is in skilled nursing facilities because of the fact that you have a lot of varied level providers and you have a lot of short staff or staff shortages. So there's a lot of individuals that are pressed for time, don't necessarily have the opportunity to go and review all of the records or be able to request records. So we want to be able to basically give them an opportunity or a bot that they could go and just ask natural language questions like, is a particular patient taking anything that would affect their blood pressure? And you'd be able to basically go through and see in natural language what medications they're on and how they're going to affect their blood pressure. You can take it a step further as well and basically analyze if they're going to be having any allergies or anything like that that may contribute and cause significant issues. It was built largely with a lot of the sponsors that are playing on today. If you want to go into that and kind of talk through some of that and how We don't have all the technical spec around, but I think we can sort of talk about some of it.
Yeah, and sure. Let me switch back. Sorry, do you mind making me?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the idea is that we start with, again, start with skilled nursing facilities, build up our system, and then expand eventually so that patients can also query their own medication history. Again, can be used across a large number of organizations, huge cost savings, reduction in adverse events, and can be used by many different people.
And essentially, one of the things we want to leverage in this process is basically using that data that's already out there, and it's required by legislation to basically publish a lot of the data that around what medications are being produced. We want to be able to take that and basically just make it indexable, make it so it's something you can search, starting with rural skilled nursing facilities, because there's a lot of limitations around specialty pharmacy care and care follow-up in those centers. And then basically trying to validate that tool within those settings and scale it up to a larger market strategy. Anything else you want to hit on that? We've got a pretty loose pricing structure, because we were a random team that came together this weekend. So we had to start from scratch in 72 hours. So we didn't quite get that far into it. But that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell. When we get, and I know we submitted an actual link with the product itself. When we get that up and running again, we can share that over with y'all as well. Sorry to be super buggy in last second with this thing. That is a hackathon, I guess.
Happy to answer any questions.
VCs, please.
Go ahead, Dimitri. I saw you come off mute.
I think that, directionally, I think that this is a very reasonable problem to solve. Rashad and I were just riffing before the start of this hackathon about horrible experiences we've had at like 2 a.m. med wrecking patients who roll in, and then you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, why are you on steroids? Like, like, what are you getting chemo for? And the patient's like, oh, just the thing, go to a doctor, go to a chemo doctor, get it. And you're like, okay, that's cool. So very sympathetic to it directionally. I think it's a interesting problem. I think it's also cool because with recent changes in interoperability, it's become much easier than it was several years ago, but it's still just not good. Still very irritating. I can see what prescriptions does like Walgreens have for a patient? When was it last refilled? But oftentimes providers, especially older providers, will say things in like the narrative part of their notes and then not reflect it in the structured part of the data. So if I look at the structured data, it's like essentially unreliable, and I'll have to like read a bunch of notes and like look for sentences like, reduce, furosemide to like every other day. No order, nothing's in the structured data set, entirely narrative. So interesting problem, cool potential for off-the-shelf LLM tools to improve on what exists right now. And cool opportunity because interoperability has made a lot of this data available, but just like slightly less good than good.
Yeah.
I'd mimic what Dimitri was saying. I guess what I'd love to hear from you all is how you landed on chatbot as like the natural interface for the provider. So I think, super interested in solving the pain point in the provider, but yeah, would love to see if you guys riffed on any other way of attacking the problem and how you land on that as the product, and maybe other things you guys were thinking about.
Oh, we riffed. We hit just about every possible interface you could this weekend. This idea evolved a lot. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, we actually tried to, I think, integrate on top of Healthy to demo for this hackathon. I think we were having some technical issues with Healthy itself, so we weren't able to make that happen for this hackathon. But the idea is that we really wanted to target rural areas or areas with low staffing, so that perhaps practitioners with not as high a level of knowledge around medications can use this as a guide tool. And eventually we would like to have this be more all encompassing. So we would like it to be a one place to do everything, all med rec, all transition of care regarding medications. So the provider would be able to interface and enter medications, enter orders, clean it up, as would the patient, as would, other practice pharmacists, ideally. I'm a pharmacist by background, so I know when we look at sometimes some of these med rec histories, it's painful. And usually we're the ones that are stuck kind of cleaning it up. And ideally the patient would be able to have this as a tool for them to empower themselves as well.
Yeah, long term, it'd be great to get in the hands of the patient, but in the immediate frame, we just want to kind of be able to deploy this in a place where that ball is getting dropped. And that's at the places that have those staffing shortage most largely. I manage primary care groups, and it's one of those things where like we have multiple providers on staff that it is their job to basically go through and data check, and it's super manual, and leveraging LLMs and AI to basically take that manual task that is just data collection and then synthesize it in a way that is like searchable. I think that's where we saw the value in a chatbot was
and the vision
together.
Yeah, and the vision is that once we get big enough, we can pair with Medicare and Medicaid, and we can really be in most care organizations around the country, so that we do have a full set of data, not just from providers, but ideally even with pharmacies as well. So we could work with independent pharmacies first, and then scale up to like the major retailers as well.
I agree with what Arif and Samitra have said. This is a massive problem to be solved. MedRec is annoying. At our hospital, the pharmacist does the MedRec, and I'm sure it's not a good use of their time. I am not as confident this solves the complete problem. A lot of MedRec is asking the patient, what is that white round pill you're taking? And you stop taking that blue pill, and identifying that. And I would like to see a more complete solution, which addresses that pain point as well. And I think you guys know that case as well. Great job on putting something like this together in such a short time. I'm not too bullish on the chatbot idea. As a physician who recently left hospital medicine, I'm not sure if I would use it, but I need this data for every patient that's admitted. So I don't see why I need to ask a question. I just want the data.
Yeah, rather looking for something that's sort of like embedded and will just kind of auto flag, and that exists, like right, that solution exists within individual EHRs, but having something that can go across EHR and follow a patient through that transition of care is really the novelty here.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
We need to move on.
Okay.
But I appreciate all the engagement. It's been great. Let me give you Ryan.
Yes. Okay. While we're doing this, I just wanted to say, like, thanks to all the hosts and sponsors and mentors for the weekend. It has been fantastic. I'm sure all of you feel that way, but I've learned a ton, had a really good time. So thanks for putting all the effort in.
I think you are co-host now, if you want to go for it.
Okay, cool. Hey, so I'm Brian, and I'm a co-founder of Mind AI. We're working on technology to enable a new standard of care for mental illness. I'm actually really excited. I co-founded with Justin Barnes. He and I, this will be our third startup working together. So kind of our special sauce is just we've done this before with each other, and it's a ton of fun, and I really trust him. So it's going to be great, I think. Unfortunately, I came to this problem through personal experience and suffering in my own family, how badly mental illness can affect individuals and families. It really, when you're talking about how debilitating it can be, it can really kind of take everything from someone. My oldest daughter, she's 20 now, but she started having problems when she was younger. She's a artistic kid. She's into musical theater. She got into college for musical theater, and she got scholarships and artistic scholarships. But before she went to college, she had multiple suicide attempts. She was hospitalized multiple times. The police took her to the hospital in handcuffs multiple times. That's what they do here in California, unfortunately. It was horrific. It's really, really bad. It's still really, really bad. And what I realized was, even though there's a lot of really caring, informed doctors, they don't have the information that they need in order to help. They help, but we're still working like medicine worked for other ailments long ago. It's a bunch of things. It's it's self-report data, and it's observation data. So when we go to select a treatment for someone with a serious mental health issue, more than half the time, patients don't respond to that medication. If it's a medication, they don't respond to it half the time. So doctors are recommending these treatments based on the information they have, but they don't have the information that they would really need to make a good decision. So there's a lot of trial and error. On average, it takes several months in order to determine if a medication is working. So in a process of trial and error, now this is going to draw on and on and on. People suffer for months, weeks, years. Like it can go on and on and on for many people. My daughter now is in her 3rd year. She's tried like 9 different medications. Some stuff's helped, some stuff hasn't. But it's an ongoing struggle. So we're trying to solve this problem, or at least improve this problem in the short term. And the way we're doing that is by trying to improve that observation data and the self-report data. And we're doing that in a number of ways we'll go into. We also want to help the patient to understand their condition better, kind of like Rico, like to be able to have access to what is this medication I'm on, what's the doses, what are the possible side effects, to help them understand it. We also want to empower physicians. 80% of the first medication is prescribed by a primary care provider. This person's not an expert typically in mental health conditions, but patients need to go to their primary care provider because that's who they have access to. There aren't enough psychiatrists or psychologists. So that's where they're getting service. So we want to empower them with what are the golden rules for treatment for patients in different conditions. I have something about biomarkers here because that's coming, in 24, 36 months from now. We will have better things, but for now, what we have is this observation and self-report data. The interface, it is built on an LLM, so some of you investors will love that, just like you did for Rico. But the idea is to talk to a patient in a way that they can understand and to let them ask questions about their condition, about what's going on with them, about their medication, about side effects. Let them record what's going on if they're missing sleep. I know with my kids, when they have psychiatric episodes, they don't remember what happened. And then when we go to a doctor in a month, a lot of that detail is just gone, it's lost. And we need to capture that to help the doctors know what to do. And then we also have something for the doctors. This shows an SMS interface. This could actually be running inside of MyChart or inside of Epic or inside of some other dashboard the doctor has. It doesn't have to be a text interface. It can be reports. But the idea is to summarize what's going on with the patient for the doctor. So when you go in for that visit, the doctor has this perfect index card of what's been going on with you the last month, and they're ready to actually sit down and engage with you and help you. And then they also have recommendations about, potential next steps. Some of these drugs, instead of waiting for 3 months, if you don't respond in 6 weeks, statistics say, they only 1% chance that you're actually going to respond at that dosage for that drug. You could change it at 6 weeks and increase this timetable. So that's the initial thing. We have a number of different guides for help. One is for the patients, another's for the doctors, and we're going to do the care team. So, I'm part of the care team for my kids. They go to the doctor, they get a new medication, but I'm the one that helps them fill it and be compliant with it. They could share that information with me so that I can help them with that part of their information, and I can engage with it. I can know the prescription numbers, the right pharmacy dosages, and all those things. We built this as a platform so it can get built into things. And then this is kind of let me go back. This slide's a little muddled, but really what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the best place to start. And we feel like the best place to start is actually with health systems, because they're very focused on, if you look at these patients, and the first time the patient reaches out for help with their primary care provider, they're having depression symptoms or anxiety symptoms, that can lead to productivity issues. And these care networks and a lot of the bigger employers, unions that have health plans, Walmart, Target, those kinds of places, they're very interested in making sure that their staff has good healthcare so that they don't miss as much work. They don't have these problems where they're filing for FMLA and STD and LTD claims. As far as the market goes, really the thing at the bottom there is kind of the most interesting. 5.5 million.
10 seconds to wrap up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that's good. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to focus on this fidelity of communication and data between the patient and their primary care provider for mental health treatment selection.
Awesome. I have a question. So this is great. I was wondering, you're interacting with a primary care physician, and assuming primary care physicians are quite busy, how do you think about reimbursement? Like, what is the are there areas of reimbursement for the primary care physician so that, do they get compensated for spending more time taking care of the patient? or is there a way to triage like severe patients to therapists and like kind of going through that instead of focusing only on the PCP?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think initially with these patients that have more mild symptoms, and it's really about saving the PCP time and helping them do a better job. So reimbursement would be the same. They'd have the same amount of time, but they could do a better job and they could help people more. I absolutely think there's a huge opportunity to triage people much more quickly and get them up the levels of care. There's in San Diego, there's some collaborative care providers, and they do some of this now where, you know, they're taking these mental health patients off the hands of some of these hospital networks, and they triage them up and down the stack pretty well. So I think there's a big opportunity to do that as well.
Hey, Brian, first off, just, you know, sorry to hear about your daughter. Mental health is just such a huge unsolved issue here in the US and globally.
I appreciate that.
I would love to hear a little more how you think about like the competition, because it's still a huge problem, but I know from our seats, like we see a lot of businesses that are still trying to solve this, but a lot of businesses that are more scaled, selling into the same groups, trying to get the attention from the same people that you're going to be going out and trying to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, at a base scale, I want to see this problem solved, right? And I don't see anybody solving it in a way that I'm seeing in the clinic at all. I'm not saying people aren't trying to solve it, but I'm not seeing solutions in the clinic. I know there's a lot of people working on it, and I know with the advent of LLMs, this gets more approachable for making an interface that people will actually engage with. I think the key really is those two pieces, right? You have to get the patients to actually engage with it and to feel some relief and some help and some better understanding. Like, I think there's some nurturing there that's important. And by the same token, the doctors, they have to not feel threatened. They have to feel enabled by it. So I think that's really the trick. And we haven't proven that yet. Like, we've proven technically that we can like bound the problem and we can answer the question and we can collect the right information and prepare it for the doctor. But we haven't proven behaviorally that we can do both of those pieces. I think whoever does that in a really, really good way is going to do very well.
Brian, thanks for the presentation. I'll play devil's advocate. As a physician who has been fairly burnt out several times in the past year, working in primary care, I'm very unlikely to onboard a solution that does not increase revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll kind of say it as plainly as that, for better or worse. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really important. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like, I think at the end of the day, we want to be software as a medical device. I don't want to start there because it's going to take time. I'd like to be able to get customers and revenue and traction before we do that. Honestly, you know, the place I started was not with LLMs. The place I started was with neurobiomarkers, and they're coming, and they're going to be a really important piece of this treatment selection. They're just not quite ready yet, but this is completely viable now to do either optical scans or EEG tests on people and help with the treatment selection. Those are going to be upsells, right? There's a company today, Genomine, that sells a genetic test for $2,000. That's terrible, right? It gives you very little fidelity. It helps you like know that you're going to have digestive problems from an SSRI, but it's not really telling you whether that SSRI is going to help you or not. So I think there's a big opportunity for an upsell with both reports for things like biomarkers, and then also software as a medical device that would be ongoing. So it maybe takes less of the doctor time. We can take some of that away, but you can actually bill for this thing monthly with patients.
Talk me through a proposed future go-to-market strategy with one particular neurobiomarker.
Yeah, so the neurobiomarker that's been published about is a detection using EEG for sertraline. And they went from, that being 20-30% hit rate to 80% for the people that they got a hit on for this. This was Amit Etkin's lab, and they're using it at Alto. So with that kind of test, I mean, that's one model for one drug. What I would like to do is I would like to build a lot of models for all the drugs that are out of patent. The ones that are coming that are going to be under patent again are all going to be done by companies like Alto. But for all the treatments that are out of patent, I think you could build models and you could charge for that test. It would be ideal if people actually got these kinds of scans once a year, something like that. You could monitor your symptoms over time. And you can see how these drugs are affecting you. But you could do tests. It's been shown potentially effective for PTSD, even CBT prediction of whether CBT is going to be effective for you. So I think it's not just medication treatment, it's other things too. But I think you could bill for the test, and then you could bill for ongoing maintenance.
Thank you. We'll need to move on to the next presentation now. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, judges.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Team 28, you guys ready to go?
Yep.
You have the floor. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to introduce you guys to triage.ai. This is a speedy AI-powered emergency care triage built for clinicians by clinicians. The backstory of our project here was observing some of what we saw, a couple of the clinicians on our team being one of the biggest pain points that we experienced in the hospital, and that was around decision-making that can kind of be made in the gray area. The ER is one of the most busy parts of the hospital. It's where patients all go through before they're admitted, but it's also the #1 bottleneck of the hospital. And this is something that we really think, based on our personal experiences, think could be much more frictionless and standardized. In the last 48 hours, we've talked to 10+ clinicians and identified an opportunity, which is a 360-degree triage tool that'll help us capture the documents and history that we need for patients, a large language model that we've built with synthetic data in the last 24 hours that incorporates patient past medical history and presented symptoms to help us decide where the most appropriate area, timely triage, and consult and diagnostic tests are. And the impact of this type of solution is really reducing ER wait times, assigning the right level of provider to each patient, and ultimately improving quality of care, while also impacting hospital finances in a positive way. The market that we're playing in here, it's my back of the envelope here. It's $300 billion kind of moves through, $3 trillion moves through the ER every year, and 300 billion of that is something that we think is addressable. With the business model that we've identified in our pricing model, we think there's about $11 billion a year opportunity with a combination SaaS contracting fee as well as a rev share model. And the bottom line of this is, like, ERs are cash cow for hospitals when used correctly, but they're also where patients often receive primary care or social determinants of health care, and we should be moving those patients to the most appropriate area of care for them. This is kind of like a walkthrough of some of our experiences admitting patients or seeing them in the emergency room and how we've gone through it. And kind of the TLDR here is it's error prone, slow, and really not standardized. With Triage AI, we can really improve this process to make it safer, higher value for patients, and higher value for clinicians and health systems. Our key product features are a smart chart review, an intake assist, and a triage and plan recommendation. And I'll show you a link to our MVP in a second. But really, our go-to-market plan is to identify like 2 to 3 key health system partners to co-build with. As a team that's sold into enterprise health systems before, this is where we really think we can stand out and co-develop something that clinicians actually like using. We kind of hit on our fees and pricing model before, but the basic model is a SaaS fee and then a 3% year-over-year percentage of revenue fee, similar to the way RCM does it. The competitors in the market are really point solutions, but most importantly, aren't really designed in a way that works well with clinical workflows. And lastly, our team is, we love working together. I am the least impressive person on the team and think of myself as someone who can hopefully bring out the talents of the other folks here who come from places like Apple and Google and Turquoise Health and McKinsey. And I will quickly share with you our product demo.
Judges, questions, comments?
Do I have time to do a quick product demo, or did I run over? Just totally fine if I did.
I can ask a question in the meantime. Super interesting. I think I understand the problem for sure. Would love to better understand how, like, you guys are starting to think about getting into that workflow. because that's going to be the hardest part, right? You're going to go in, you're going to sell to a hospital. The ROI story is always a little bit hard with these types of things. But then you're doing a double sale. So then you're going in and, as a medical provider, you have to go convince a bunch of physicians who are really busy, especially in an ER. So I'd love to hear how you guys are thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and probably the biggest, what I think is like the biggest challenge in any like workflow tool sale. I think the way that I'd love to go about this is empowering clinicians to feel like they built it themselves. Like this product is a super MVP, but I'd love to get feedback from 100 clinicians at the type of place that we want to first go to pilot. And I think that implementation part is really, really big in it. One of my past roles, I worked doing innovation needs assessments and like implementing vendors at Commonwealth Care Alliance, a payvider. That was a large part of what we did. We talked with clinicians to understand their needs. And when we implemented our workflow tool, and I was part of the team that implemented Rubicon MD there, and like that was really figuring out how clinicians wanted to be doing it and what solutions out there in the vendor market solve those. So I think it's a really good question and a big existential one, Sam, but I think a lot of it comes down to helping them feel empowered and the people skills around it.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question more on the technical stack. So understanding that like a lot of, the language learning model kind of safety for medical environments might not be at like super ready yet. How do you make sure that you're not, because it's such a environment where you have to make quick decisions. How do you make sure that you have constraints on your like kind of, decision-making tools so that there's no risk of, hurting a patient?
Yeah, it's a big one. And I think like the realistic answer to it is going to be really highly regulated and difficult to do in a way that like that this really end case that we're presenting here is done on day one. Like day one, really, I see the MVP being the intake assistant and the LLM that does the chart review and helps you synthesize information and make decisions and aiding that clinical decision making. Ultimately, like the safety part, Vivian, what I'd say is I think every day in a hospital when you go into an ER is really unsafe. I think the fact that we're making a lot of gray area decisions that you had people like me making them while I was on a 28-hour shift is probably way more concerning than AI giving me a recommendation and then helping me decide to do that based on old chart routes that I actually didn't read because I didn't have time. And I'd love to see that. I think that's going to become really commonplace in 5 years, but we've got to play ball with what works in the system today and like kind of take those small steps to get there.
Thank you.
I'm curious where I think that awesome product, really cool problem, totally like, on a tear in the literature, like in the EM literature right now, cool ways of triaging, 30% of patients like leave without being seen. They're disproportionately like, minorities, sick patients, et cetera, who leave before ever being seen like from the waiting room because like, it takes like 6 hours to be seen. So totally cool product. I consider having a very exact and tight use case for go to market, for example, being like, we will help you with your like, VBC engagement with like, whatever, because your population like lives around you, co-localizes to like a handful of EDs. You don't want those people leaving without being seen. Or like a message which is like, we will task shift to the cheapest person who can field this. And oftentimes most of the people who leave are leaving because of like low medical complexity, high social complexity things. It should be like, triage to like a social worker, et cetera. But if you do that efficiently, it's like better for them, better for you. You save a bunch of money. They avoid like a catastrophic bill. If you are in some VBC thing, you can do stuff. I think like dialing in a message I think your problem is a huge problem. I think your solution is like a good general solution, but I feel like success here will be like nailing a very exact particular kind of like customer and really tightly selling to that need. And I suspect that probably something like, who are the 30% of patients who like leave without being seen and like what's their deal and how do they become painful for healthcare systems, especially in like, new models. I feel like that's going to be like the wedge that's going to make something successful here. And I think the score to beat is the like stuff that Stanford pilots where it's like, the same, but it's like, with a like virtual primary care office, like embedded in like the ED triage process.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Something that like is definitely worth a lot of thought. And like my first stab at that, or answering like where we might start, I think about like payviders in groups with like a lot of VPC already embedded, and think about like really high cost populations like HARP, or patients with 2+ chronic conditions or serious mental illness, where there's a lot of high frequency of ER visits, and then also not appropriate triage as like kind of the intake. And then embedded urgent care is also a great way for hospitals to preserve revenue. If you think about hospitals really expanding their desire to like own multiple assets across the primary care, urgent care, and like nursing home SNF stack. So then to keep them in network and embedding virtual visits with those is kind of how I think about the starting point, but totally agree with you. You really have to be precise with those early pilots.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is maybe standalone urgent cares, and being like, who should you get, like, get them like the hell out of your urgent care. It's like in proper, like, ED in a hospital, like sooner than later.
Awesome. And we have our product people on the call as well, if you guys have any questions about the product itself.
We have time for like one more minute, then we do have a hard stop due to some judges.
If we do have one more minute, do you want to quickly play the demo? If you have it handy, that is.
Is that okay, guys?
Yes, let's get to it.
It is for the ER physician who's triaging patients on the floor, the conditions that the patient is facing, some social factors that they don't on their own, or they have somebody to take care of them. And then let's see what the AI gives us. So of course, it first of all tells us whether the patient needs to be admitted. Then it also gives us the reasoning, how it reached this decision, so that the physician can review that and ensure that it makes sense. And then it also provides us with a medical plan for the patient. And in terms of the AI component, we're using OpenAI's GPT-4, but in the future plan to experiment with or plan to look at fine-tuning open source models as well, and also work with embeddings. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna have to call it. Thank you everyone for participating. There'll be more announcements to come regarding winners, etc. Thank you everyone for coming, showing up, supporting judges, participants, mentors, administrators, etc. To be continued. Adios. Has got it on.